I'll say yes, Lord, yes, to your will and to your way. I'll say yes, Lord, yes, I will trust you and obey. When your spirit speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree. And my answer will be yes, Lord, yes. I'll say yes, Lord, yes, to your will and to your way. I'll say yes, Lord, yes, I will trust you and obey. When your spirit speaks to me, with my whole heart I'll agree. And my answer will be yes, Lord, yes. Father, we thank you today for your goodness, your mercy, your grace, your kindness. We so appreciate, God, the love that you show us day after day, and the grace, God, that you provide us over and over again. What a joy it is to be here. What an honor, God, to be in your presence. Teach us your way and show us your plan. Help us, God, day after day to live for you with all of our heart, our mind, our body, and our soul. We say yes to you, God, now and forevermore. We'll love you always. In Jesus' name, amen. You may be seated. We're grateful to God for all that is done. Super glad that God has given us this privilege and His honor to be able to be here on today. Thanking God for all of you that are here, those that are watching online, and those that are also watching by Facebook Live as well. And as you guys are coming in, Sister Hawkins, praise the Lord to you. And hey, Pam, how are you? To all of you that are online today, it is a great opportunity for us to be able to share together and to commune together. And for us to talk as well. We're going to have a wonderful time on today. Last week, we got a chance to dive into the topic, which we entitled for this series, Hush Your Mouth. And the idea behind the topic is to talk about things in church that we don't normally talk about, to bring up issues that we don't normally deal with, but need to be said, need to be communicated among us. And so last week we dealt with low self-esteem, and we talked about low confidence on last week. Today we're going to get into emotions, more importantly emotional intelligence. We're going to talk about hurt, and we're going to deal with and try to tackle depression, and also get into, if we can get to the end of it, and suicide. Those are the varying topics that we want to deal with today, and just kind of converse one with the other, because I believe that as a church, as we begin to talk and we begin to share, the more we begin to share, the better off, of course, that will be. And as we start to share and start to communicate and we start to talk, then maybe these, what we refer to oftentimes people say, these taboo issues that we would not normally refer to or talk about, maybe we can have a better handle on what's going on in the world, because we have a better handle on what's going on in our lives. So that's the quest today. Those that are watching by Facebook Live, you guys can help us out today by hitting that share button, so your friends and your family, that they can be a part of this discussion on today, as many of them who can. So hit that share button. If you know someone that will be blessed by this conversation, please tag them, and just all you got to do is just in the blog section start to write their name and hit their name when it pops up, so that they're tagged in this conversation, that they're blessed by this. Those that are watching by YouTube Live, God bless you guys, and hopefully you're being blessed by this as well. We want you to be connected with us and what's happening in this overall conversation. It's going to be a good one today, and I'm excited to be able to share this with you. and for us to be able to have a chance to exchange together as well. So let's get started as we'll talk about, of course, the topic is hush your mouth, things that we don't talk about in church, but we need to talk about. And today, again, the focus is emotional intelligence. We'll deal with that, hurt, depression, and also suicide. So let's get started. And by the way, for those who are new to this discussion, here's how it works. This is a conversation. So we won't be, or I won't be, doing all the talking. We're going to talk together, and so you'll get a chance to share. We'll talk back and forth one with each other, because I believe it's important for us as a group to kind of talk and interact together, so we'll have a better handle on, and also better able to share the kind of things that are happening. Let's get started. In the 21st century, the most significant challenge for people will be how to manage their heart with their life. That's happening right now, and we're seeing it almost, unfortunately, on a daily occurrence. Over the weekend, what made national news, there was an 8-year-old that committed suicide. And this is staggering to think that an 8-year-old child would take their own life. In Indianapolis, there was a 9-year-old, I believe, that took their own life. And then even as of yesterday, if you caught the news, the shooting that took place in Chicago, there was a shooting at a hospital in Chicago where a man goes in and he shoots the ER doctor, which happened to be his ex-fiancee. She broke it off with him. Then he takes her life. Then there's someone coming off the elevator who happened to be then a physician, a pharmaceutical assistant, who was an innocent bystander and had nothing to do with it at all, who is shot and killed. And then there's a police officer who was trying to intervene, whose life was taken. I believe some shots fired between the police officer and the assailant. And that individual, they said he also turned the gun on his own self, so they're not really sure as of yet if he died of his own self-infliction or if it was the shot from the police officer. But nonetheless, the ability to be able to manage one's heart, one's thoughts, one's mind, along with their life. And this is a prevailing thing that's going on in our world today. How are we able to cope with? Well, the reality is, the rise in the drug epidemic, and also those who are the overdoses that are going on. Just even here in Hartford County, these numbers are staggering. We're nearly almost in Hartford County alone, up to 500 people nearly in Hartford County that have overdosed within this year. It's just staggering to think that just in this county alone that those numbers are that high. My point is, being able to manage one's thoughts, one's heart, one's mind, along with life, is a challenge that we'll have, and we're having in this 21st century. These skills requires negotiation, action planning, networking, and just the quality of things like self-awareness, self-esteem, and confidence. Last week, we were dealing with self-esteem and confidence, and we realized that self-esteem and confidence has a lot to do with everything that we do in life. Your self-esteem shows up everywhere you go. Your confidence is everywhere you go. It's in everything that you do. You can't even cook a meal without your self-esteem or your confidence. So whatever you're doing, it's everywhere. It's in every situation. It is. You are a common denominator everywhere you go. You are always a common denominator, especially when it comes in terms of who you are and where you are as well. And so it shows up in life, our personal development, and our career choices, and just the functioning skills to be able to move through day-to-day life. So educating the heart is as important as educating the mind. emotional intelligence, which we're going to refer to throughout this lesson mostly as EQ. Having an EQ is essential because your EQ helps you to deal with the aspects of your sociological interaction with other people, the psychological, how you behave when you're around those people. And the truth is, your EQ or your emotional intelligence has even a lot to do with your decisions that you make spiritually as well. Your surrender to God, your trust, hallelujah, your trust in God has to do with your emotions. You cannot trust God without your emotions being involved. So if you're going to trust God, those emotions show up. If you don't trust God, well, the reality is your emotions are there even when you decide not to trust God. So emotional intelligence, or your EQ, will foster outcomes in every part of your life, the social relationships, careers, and then the list just goes on and on. Aristotle says this: anyone can become angry. That's easy. Then says, but to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, Aristotle says, well, that's not easy. No. Jesus puts it like this, Matthew 5. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And that's an amazing thing, because when Jesus is dealing with meekness, meekness is a medium, and he's using the philosophy of Aristotle, actually, and meekness is a medium between two extremes. Meekness is neither right-wing or it is left-wing. Meekness is not conservative, nor it is liberal. It is the medium between the two. So when Jesus says, blessed are the meek, the idea of meekness, brothers and sisters, it really is self-control. And so he is saying to us, blessed are those who have self-control, for they shall inherit the earth. And it's really an amazing way to look at it. And then Paul adds, and he shows us in Galatians, the 5th chapter, verse 22 and 23, as he deals with the fruit of the Spirit. When you get to the words meekness and temperance in the Greek are used interchangeably. They both refer to self-control. So that means that self-control, and I love this especially for believers, self-control is the fruit of the Spirit. So you can't have the Holy Ghost and not have self-control. It's a part of having the fruit of the Spirit. Then it's a little deeper then. Watch this. Paul tells Timothy that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and if you read in King James, it says sound mind. All right? Okay, so what's sound mind? Well, I'm glad you asked me that question, because the Greek translation for sound mind is self-control. Isn't that interesting? So then, when Paul is writing to Timothy, he's saying God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and self-control. He's given us the ability to have self-control, and that self-control is a means of, or really the reality is, it is emotional intelligence. He's giving you emotional intelligence so that you're neither right-wing or left-wing or conservative or liberal, but that you understand, as Aristotle is presenting, that if you're going to be angry, and anger, by the way, is an emotion, it is not of the devil. Anger is an emotion that's given to us by God. And I love that. We know that because Paul writes to us and tells us, be angry and sin not. And so anger is an emotion that's given to us by God. It has to be used in the right way, at the right time, to the right degree, and even on the right people. We shouldn't be angry at the wrong people, because sometimes we are deferring anger from one person to another person because we don't want this person to be mad at us, so we got to take it out on somebody. And so we are now taking the anger out on this person who had nothing to do with the situation at all. And so it has to be done in the right way, the right time, to the right degree, and even at times upon the right person. And so it's recognized that EQ, or your emotional intelligence, is important in your social relationships at every single level. We learn and begin to comprehend our emotions from childhood. It's really amazing. An infant just coming into the world, it starts to develop and understand their emotional makeup. They're receiving love from mom and dad, or no love from mom and dad or family, whatever it might be, and the child begins to interact and understand emotions. Unfortunately, not just emotions that are taught, but emotions that are also caught. And so all of us have emotions that are either taught to us or that we catch, every single last one of us. And so it's important that as believers that we understand these are being fostered in us from the time of childhood, and they begin to grow and they begin to develop over time, so that as the children of God, we end up becoming, or we should become, whom God designed us to be, having the right temperament in every situation. Our emotions are given to us by God. Now that is something that we got to let that sink into us for a moment. Our emotions are given to us by God. And so if God gives us emotions, that must mean, if we're made in the image and the likeness of God, then God is an emotional being. Hallelujah. So if God is emotional, then we were made in his image and likeness, then we are emotional creatures, because God is emotional, and I love that. So when God, we see that throughout the scriptures, and I'm going to point out some things in just a moment where you'll see Jesus being emotional, but God's emotional, or else he would not get angry at mankind because of sin. He would not pour out wrath upon people because of God can't even bless you if he's not emotional. His blessings come from a place of emotions, always. And so God created emotions, he designed them, and so that they have, every emotion has a purpose. So as we're starting to track, you may want to write that down. Every emotion has a purpose. Glory to God. Every single emotion has a purpose. So it's up to us to begin to kind of to carve out and find out, to dig out and explore why would God give us emotions. We got to find out the purpose for that emotion. I got to know. I need to know why he gave me joy. I need to know why he gave me happiness. I got to understand why he gave me sadness, why he gave me grief, while God created in me these kinds of feelings. I need to know. Why I cry and the differences with the cries. Because every time I'm crying, it's not because I'm sad. Sometimes I'm crying because I'm just overjoyed. So I've got to be able to know why he created these emotions and the purpose behind those emotions. When we discover God's original design for emotions, we'll be able to we'll be able and better suited to appreciate life and even the people in our lives. Having and even knowing our EQ is essential for healthy thoughts. It's essential for healthy behaviors. That means this then, every emotion leads to reactions. All of our emotions lead to reactions. So let's do this, because I should have made do this a little earlier, but we'll go ahead and do it now. I need you to repeat after me. I am an emotional being. That's important. Now, when I say this, I'm saying this on this premise as well, that every person is emotional. And the misunderstanding is that women are emotional and men are not emotional. I don't know who came up with that concept. I have no idea why they came up with that idea. It doesn't make any sense at all. Men are just as emotional as women. And here's my point. So just because a man or a person is not crying does not mean that they're not emotional. if bruh is not crying and maybe he's quiet and walked away, I need you to understand him being quiet and walking away is an emotion, because 93% of communication is nonverbal and 7% is verbal. So when he shuts down, he's expressing an emotion, okay? Because we're all emotional beings. And just because you're crying doesn't mean that you're being necessarily emotional. Sometimes you're just trying to create a reaction in somebody else, because we're all emotional creatures. Every single last one of us are emotional creatures. So, now, I need to say this then now. My emotions lead to my reactions. Yeah, that's important. My emotions lead to my reactions every single time. My emotions will always lead to my reaction. So for instance then, when you look at it, emotions can be either, the reaction of that emotion can be destructive or constructive. It can determine life or death, and it can control freedom or bondage. Now, here's what's interesting. Keep in mind, we'll just refer to one of the latest things, which was yesterday in the news, the Chicago shooting. And the Chicago hospital, this guy who came in and did the shooting, his emotions led to his reaction. Now, the action was she broke off, the doctor unfortunately, she broke off an engagement. He could not deal with psychologically the fact that she broke off this engagement. It began to swell in him until now it was something he could not take his focus away from, until he began to decide thoughts on ways to either get back at her, or maybe he thought that she could not go be with anybody else. We don't know the full details, but we do know this. He reacted to by an emotion that he was having based off of an action. So then that means actions will then incite or trigger an emotion. The emotion then will always have a reaction. In this instance then, unfortunately, his reaction was destructive and not constructive. It determined death instead of life. Now, there is an Army individual who was held as a POW for quite some time. The story goes like this, that while he was held as a prisoner of war, every day he was drawing pictures of golf. Every day he's drawing pictures of golf and various golf courses. And once he was freed from captivity, which was several years later, he was in effervescent spirits. He was in a great state of mind. And they were trying to figure out to him, what did you do to remain so sane? Why are you in such good emotional health? His response was this: I played golf every day. Now, that's interesting. So they're asking him, where were you playing golf? Because you were held in chains. You were held captive. So we don't see any golf courses around. So where were you playing golf every day? And then as they see the pictures, he actually drew pictures of places or courses that he had drawn, that he actually played at years before. And now being held as a prisoner, his body was held in captivity, but not his mind, okay? That tells us a whole lot, that even though your situation might manifest a presentation of bondage, it doesn't mean that your mind has to be in bondage. So in this instance, this gentleman had great emotional intelligence because he did not allow his situation to dictate his mental freedom or his emotion. He knew in his mind that he was free, which means then you can captivate my body. You can imprison my being, but I have have to decide whether or not I allow you to imprison my mind. Each one of us have to make that decision because, again, your emotional intelligence will determine constructive behavior or destructive behavior. It will determine life or death, and it will determine for us either freedom or bondage. So all of us have to consider that. All of us have to look at that. So let's talk about emotional intelligence, and let's look at the effects that emotional intelligence has on our life. Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter and the 4th verse, says there is to everything there is a time to weep and a time to laugh. And that's the 4th verse, a time to mourn and a time to dance. It's time for us to speak out, time for us to speak up. We can no longer be quiet, we can no longer be silent. We've got to no longer hush our mouth. We got to talk about things like this because it's real important for us to do so. So let's get started as we engage or embark upon this. Those that are watching my Facebook Live, you don't want to miss these next few moments. Hit that share button so your friends can be a part of it and join in on the conversation as well. We need you to be a part of this conversation, so make sure you hit that share button so we can all converse. Now, here's how you guys can help us out on Facebook Live as well. We're going to be talking and we'll be sharing in here. We want your comments to be heard as well. So in the blog section, I'm going to ask you, as we're talking and discussing, you write, and we'll echo what you're saying, your sentiments. We want to know what you're thinking as well. So we'll echo those things in this session, and we'll talk for you. We'll be your voice on today. We want you to be a part of what's going on, and so thank you guys for being a part of this today, and we can't wait to hear what you have to say. So let's dive in. Let's just go there, and we want to talk about emotions and all these things. So our first question is, why did God create emotions? Now, Leo's going to be our help us out as our host, and he'll pass the mic around. So for those who are here, all you got to do is just raise your hand. He'll help you out by bringing the mic to you. So why did God create emotions? So we know that emotions are given to us. We know that we are emotional creatures. So as we're starting this, one more time, repeat after me. I am an emotional creature. And say, my emotions lead to my reactions. All right. And so why did God create emotions? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Pastor. I believe God created emotions, like you said, to have a healthy life, to appreciate life, and live it more abundantly.
Okay, all right. So God gave us emotions for us to appreciate life and even to live life more abundantly. Somebody else, why would God create emotions? Yes.
I believe that God created emotions I guess because your emotions kind of define who you are, and God didn't want to just make carbon, like pieces of paper. So he wanted us to all have distinct qualities, and God wanted us to be expressive.
Okay. So, a means of expression?
Yeah, I guess you could say.
Okay. You can express yourself, or it's a means of communication. It's a way for us to...
And differentiation.
And what else?
Differentiation.
Differentiation. Okay. So we can express, we can communicate, and also differentiate. Somebody else. Why would God create emotions? It's to appreciate life, live life abundantly, to express ourselves, to communicate, right, and even to differentiate as well. So they become means by which we can differentiate. All right. Yes, sir. It's a form of communication. All right. This is online. It's a form of communication. So we can understand Him. That's good. Pam is saying that Candace is saying it's a form of communication. Pam is saying it is, so we can understand Him. And Monette is saying we're created in His image. So we're created in God's image, and He did this so we could express. We'll never know what you're thinking unless there is an emotion. Yeah, so emotion. It gives us a means of expression. It gives us a window into some of the thought process. Keeping in mind again, communication. 93% of communication is non-verbal, and 7% is verbal. So your emotions are going to tell us more of what you're thinking, more so than what your words are going to say. Okay, Candace is saying it is a part of who God is. All right, so let's go a step further. So God created emotions. We agree with that, and we're having to understand as to why He gave us emotions. But what is emotional intelligence, and how does it affect our daily lives? What's emotional intelligence, and how does it affect our daily lives? As you're considering that thought, let me then lead you in this way. The Psalms are full of emotions, absolutely full of emotions. David says, in the Psalms, why art thou disquieted within me? That's what he says. He says, why art thou cast down on my soul? Why art thou disquieted within me? Hope in God, He should the health of your countenance. So essentially what David is showing is, why do I feel so downcast? Why do I feel like I'm just lost? And he says, but I got to hope in God, because when he says the health of my countenance, in other words, he's saying God is the one that makes the blood begin to flow back in my face. He's essentially saying that, my emotions and the things I go through will make me lose my color, the color in my face. But my hope in God brings color back to my face. And then there's some other Psalms as well. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to a rock that is higher than I. It's an emotion. And then Jesus on the cross, Jesus says, he's quoting the Psalm, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Okay. Now I'm going to ask you then, is Jesus not being emotional while he's, and I know you're going to tell me it's one of the 7 cries of the cross, but I have to echo that Jesus is being emotional as he's there, because he feels abandoned. He feels like he's left. He feels rejection. So my God, why have you forsaken me? And then in the Garden of Gethsemane, he's praying there, and we got to see it more than a prayer. He is expressing his humanness is being seen. So as he's praying in the garden, if it be possible, he says, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but your will, or thy will be done. I'm having again to say, I'm suggesting then that Jesus is being emotional. Okay, he's been emotional. When he's at the tomb, and Lazarus is dead, and he had been dead for 4 days. Mary and Martha are hanging out there. There's weeping going on, and they're saying to him, if you had been here earlier, my brother would not have died. They're blaming him for the cause that their brother's continued death. And now Jesus, one of our shortest verses in the Bible, in the English Bible that is, not the Greek Bible, but in the English Bible, John 11:35, Jesus wept. Why is he crying? Is he not being emotional when he cries? One more point. He comes to the temple. He's in the temple area on the out parts, and they're selling sacrifices or animals for sacrificing, and they're because it's a time of the feast days, they're marking up the value of it, and not only marking the value, it's unjust weights, unjust balances that they do that. And Jesus walks into the temple area, and he starts flipping over tables. Is he saying, non-emotionally, my house is a house of prayer, you've made it a den of thieves? Or is he turning tables over because he's angry? He's angry, and he reaches for a whip, which is really interesting, and he picks up the whip, and he's driving people out of the temple with this whip. I'd have to say that Jesus is being emotional at this time as he's driving the people out of the temple. So my point is, Jesus shows us emotion. Okay, he shows us emotion, and we see emotion all through our Bible. We see it. It's all through there. We can't read the Bible without emotion, and we should not. We should understand the humanness that's there, because we can better relate to what's going on when we understand the humanness that's there. So what is emotional intelligence? Now, don't be afraid to use the assistance of Google or whatever, Firefox, whatever you use. This is time for a dialogue. So don't be afraid to use that. What's emotional intelligence, and how does it affect our daily lives? Somebody? Kind kind of give you a moment so you could be ready for the question, right?
So emotional intelligence to me is being conscious or aware of your emotions. Like, how awoke are you to how you're feeling or and how it's affecting you?
Okay, so being aware, just being aware of your emotions and how they're affecting you. Somebody else? What's emotional intelligence? Yes, sir.
I also, agreeing with Sister Jessica, I would also add that it's being aware of what you're feeling, but also being able to define it and to interpret why you're feeling that way as well.
Okay, so knowing what it is, defining why it is, and what else? And being able to defining it and then being able to determine why you're feeling that way. And determine why you feel that way. What else? Emotional intelligence. Share behind you.
In addition to those items, also being able to have a sense of empathy and level balance, I would say, in relationships with others.
Okay.
That's also part of emotional intelligence.
Okay. Empathy towards others and having that balance. There's one other small piece. I guess actually one word that we're missing when it comes to emotional intelligence. So it's not only awareness, it's not only having empathy, it's not being able to define or even why, but it's also control. Okay, you got to be able to not only know what that emotion is, but be able to control the emotion as well. Keep in mind, again, that this Bible talks about the self-control. Meekness is self-control. So blessed are the meek, those who have self-control, they shall inherit the earth. Bible also says in Proverbs that the person who does not control his own spirit, doesn't have self-control, he's like a city without walls. So he's vulnerable to anything. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and remember again, that word sound mind is self-control, right? They're coming in. Marva is saying the decisions to make daily decisions. So that is how it affects our daily lives. Tanya is saying being aware of how and who will affect you so that you remain in control of yourself, all right? Robinson is saying being able to rationalize your reaction to the emotion you're feeling. Monette saying being in control, and Sister Hawkins is saying staying in tune with your feelings. And so the reality is, of course, our emotional intelligence affect every part of our lives, and it's important in our decision making because we're making decisions every single day. Every single day. You made a decision to come to Bible study today. You didn't have to come. You chose to come. It was a decision that you made. You decided to eat. You decided to get dressed. God bless you. Thank you for doing that. But you decided. You decided to brush your teeth. Thank you for doing that. We appreciate it. But you decided that the decision that you made every day. You chose to be nice to us when you walked in the room today. You chose not to be violent when you came in. We so appreciate that. There are decisions that you make every single day, and your emotions are a part of it. Now, keep in mind, again, everyone is an emotional creature. Hallelujah. Men are not more emotional than women, and women are not more emotional than men, because everybody is emotional. Everyone is emotional because God created, who is emotional, God created us in his image and likeness, and God is emotional. And by the way, you are emotional every single day, all day long, every moment. As a matter of fact, you are emotional right now. You're always emotional. Whether you're crying or you're quiet, you are emotional. Whether you got it together or you're out of control, you are emotional. You're always an emotional creature. Everyone is. So it's always interesting, when I hear people say, they're just being emotional. I'm like, well, of course, they're being human, because humanness is expressing emotion. Now watch this one then. So you hear people say they're just being extra. By whose standard? Okay? How do you know they're being extra? Have you created a standard of by which, because again, keep in mind, when we make these statements, we have created in our mind a standard of what's required or what's allowed. And so when they go over that threshold of what is allowed, now we say they're just being extra. But how do you know they're being extra? Because in one setting that might not be extra, but to you in your setting, you might say, well, that's just extra. Case in point. If you're in a room that is largely, the tone is relatively low and people are relatively quiet, and the conversations are, the register of conversation volume is low, and someone comes in like, hey! Now, we would say that person's being extra, because the standard in the room is that, the room has already dictated that the volume level is low. But the reverse is also true. If you're in a room and everyone is being loud and someone's not being talkative, they're quiet, well, the reality is the room told us the volume is loud. So if they're not being loud, guess what's happening to them? They're not even loud. They're just quiet. Therefore, they're extra. My point is, we create these standards in our mind, and we assume, or because of our own standards, our own threshold, that people are extra. We're all emotional beings. Everyone. And our emotions lead to our reactions. So let's do that. Let's say it one more time. I am, you have a little life in you. I am an emotional creature. And I'll say my emotions lead to my reactions. Okay, that's always important. Your emotions lead to your reactions. I need you to do this right now. Wherever you are, especially those who are watching online, I need you to stop in this very moment and write down how you feel right now. What is your current emotion in this given situation? And please don't tell me, I don't have none. Yes, you do, because you're emotional. We all have. It could be lethargic. You could feel lethargic right now. You could feel calm. Everybody has an emotion. You can feel peaceful. You can be agitated. You can be mad at me saying, I wish he'd just shut up, getting on my nerves. What is your current emotion? What's your current emotion? Those that are watching by Facebook Live, you need to write down your emotion right now. How do you feel in this very given moment? Those that are watching by YouTube Live, I need you right now. Stop. Consider your emotion, write it down right now. Write it down right now, all right? Online, they're telling me Pamela's saying she feels content. Awesome, feels content. What is your emotion? What's your current emotion? Tanya saying she's glad she's home from the hospital, all right? Angel saying he feels calm. We all have emotions. Everybody has. Were you irritated earlier today? Did somebody on your job irritate you? Did the traffic, kind of get you a little, amped up a little bit? Did you get a phone call that upset you? Was it family? Did family somebody? Did it upset you? Oh, I love that Shaka. Shaka said she's frustrated, but she put it in all caps. Okay, so she's trying to tell us something. She's trying to tell us something. All right. All right, so Hawkins saying that she's tired, but she's content. All of us have an emotion, all right? Linda's saying she's relaxed, okay? You must be with the grandkids, I guess that's why you're relaxed. She's relaxed. Maybe she's with the grandkids today, just living it up. So all of us have an emotion. Believe it or not, I'm experiencing an emotion right now talking to you, okay? Right now, in this very situation I'm experiencing now. So you got to know that. And then, what are your emotional triggers? What are your emotional triggers? Everybody has an emotional trigger, something that sparks, something that incites you, whether it's to cry or whatever. We all have emotional triggers. I'm going to give you, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, we all have them. I want to give you one of my verbal ones, because I trust you to use this wisely as I give it to you. And by the way, I'm okay with it anyway, in case you don't. I hope I am, at least, by putting myself out there. One of my emotional triggers verbally is, you better. And when I hear someone use those two words, you better, immediately my brain starts to process, wait a minute, they're trying to demean me. They're trying to talk to me as if I'm a child. They're suggesting that I'm not on their level. And so as soon as I hear, you better, my emotions start to amp up, and I have to stop and ask myself, who's talking to me? Okay? Gotta consider that, because if I don't realize who's talking to me, I can think that this person is trying to say something, or because of who they are, they can speak to me as if I'm a child. I've got to ask myself, why are they saying this to me? It's important for me, because if I don't, then I'm going to react negatively. Over the weekend, I had someone walking to me, and they said, if I were you, well, actually, you better. And I was like, I literally grit my teeth, because I had to stop and think, well, wait a minute, who is this talking to me? Why are they saying this to me? Are they trying to demean me in the process? Now, my brain immediately says that someone is trying to demean me. It's an immediate reaction. They're trying to suggest that my opinion is not validated as valid as theirs. So I have to know what that trigger is. Now, there are many others, but that's just one of them. And you have to know what yours are. Someone in the 5:30 Bible study said, what happens when we say you better preach? I said, don't worry, I'm better now. Years ago, that would have just been that point where I would go off. But now I'm in a better place where I can stop and I can process the thought. So all of us have those thoughts, and we have to understand why we feel that way. And then when an emotion is being triggered, how do you know that an emotion has been triggered? Now, there's several ways. Sometimes people are they're sitting down and that foot starts tapping. Or maybe you're a person that your leg just shakes. You don't even know why your leg is shaking, but you're shaking your leg often. It actually it started as a coping mechanism for you to deal with something. Maybe you are someone that taps on a desk, or maybe you wring your hair all the time, or wringing your hands, or you're crumbling paper, or you're playing with rubber bands or something. It's a coping mechanism to deal with an emotion that's going on in your life, and you got to know that. Now, I'm going to give you another one of mine, trusting that you guys will love me in the process. Now, when you see me up preaching or getting ready to preach, and I'm reading the scripture, hallelujah. Sometimes you probably notice that it's like I'm rocking back and forth. Now, nobody's singing, so why am I rocking like I'm in the choir? I'm not the choir director trying to direct the choir, so why am I rocking reading the scripture? The reality is, for me, in that moment, that nervous energy is there, and I'm trying to cope with what I'm about to do. I'm now putting myself outside, and it's amazing, because I've been preaching for 29 years on Friday. And here I am still. You'd think that at some point in time, there'd be a level of confidence somewhere. So then when you see me grip onto the podium, that's the means that, because I just realized I'm rocking. Let me stop. Coping mechanism, that's what I'm saying to you. We all have them, and we got to figure out why we are responding in this way. All right. We kind of went over this part already, but it merits at least saying. Battlefield of the mind. Okay, that's what Sharon says, and she also says broken down into parts. Okay, what does the Bible say about emotional intelligence? We already kind of went over that a little bit, and then so should saints seek counseling? Should believers go to counseling? Okay, I'm hearing a yes. I'm hearing. Okay, all right. So you're telling me it's not sinful to go to counseling? Go ahead.
All right, so it's not sinful to go to counseling, because people often say, just go to God. But obviously, the same way God has assigned doctors, He's assigned like police officers, lawyers, etc. He's assigned someone specifically for this, and God can work through that individual.
Okay, yeah. It's important for us to understand that. And of course, the Proverbs tells us, in the most of the counselors, there's safety. And so it's good for us to understand that. By the way, thank you guys for responding on Facebook Live. Your comments are just outstanding. So appreciate that. Great. And thank you for the thumbs up and the hearts and stuff. You're making me feel good. And so you're helping my emotions right now by you responding. And so thank you. All right, let's go to our next one. All right, now here we are. What constitutes church hurt? And if it exists, how do we recover? What constitutes church hurt? And if it exists, how do we recover? Yes, we went there today. You know, I see a hand already going up. Yes, this is a wonderful, hot button topic. You guys help me out online, please. If you haven't already done so, hit that share button so other people can be a part of it. Please hit that share button. We need to talk about this. And also tag somebody in this. What constitutes church hurt? If it exists, then how do we recover? I need you to blog about this in your section. All right, sir?
There we go.
Church hurt, I feel, is any offense or being offended by church people.
Okay. Any offense.
Any offense.
Any offense. All right. By church people.
That's it.
Okay. All right. Somebody else. So you're saying that it does exist, and I'm assuming. You're suggesting that church hurt does exist? Okay. All right.
Okay, Pastor, church hurt to me is when people say that they love God, they love Jesus, but do not display it to the other church members.
Okay.
And it's also hurtful when they gossip, when they break confidentiality, and when they have favoritism. Okay. That's church hurt.
Okay. All right. So, gossip, not showing the love of God, favoritism, etc., are aspects of church hurt. Anybody else want to share? What is church hurt? All right. Tanya just said, church does not hurt you. It's the people who do. Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, I was going to say something along the same lines. I think what occurs is in different relationships and interactions with people and being instilled similar to people who are employed, you're around a grouping of people quite often. When you attend an organization, you are a member of an organization, such as the church, you have a lot of interactions with those individuals. The hurt comes from what the people did, not the church as a body itself. So even if someone may feel as though there was a grouping within the church that had some type of offenses against them, I don't think we can necessarily say that the body itself is at fault more than those selective individuals who actually did the offense.
Okay.
So that's where, in saying that, the part where it says, if it exists, how do we recover? I think we need to really look at the root cause and identify it for what it truly is. And then that's how we can best find recovery from hurt itself from individuals.
All right. So you're suggesting that it's not the church collectively, it's individuals who happen to go to church, right? Sister Hawkins is saying that the church is very real, but you can't blame the church per se. She's suggesting that similar to what LaShira is saying, it's not the church, because it means the entire body would have to hurt you, but rather it's people who go to church, individuals. So it's not the body's fault, but these are individuals who perhaps are at church that are hurting you. Jessica?
I think church hurt does exist, and I think what constitutes it is just the place where it happened.
Okay.
So if it happened at a hospital, it's hospital malpractice. If it happened at church, it's just church malpractice. It's just, to me, speaks to where the hurt happened. I also think that I think sometimes we play with the word church, so then it becomes an organization sometimes, it becomes a building sometimes, and then honestly, then sometimes we say, well, I am the church. I am the church, and I hurt Lael. Then in one aspect, Lael experienced hurt from the church, from a part of the church or a member of the church, because you can separate the church from who I am as a representation of the church. So I think it's unfortunate, but it does happen, and it is classified because of where it comes from or the place that it happened at. Okay.
Evangelist Todd is saying that the church didn't hurt you, but it's the people. That's what she's suggesting. So Jessica is suggesting and saying that, well, hurt would be hurt no matter where you are, but it's the location that constitutes now the kind of hurt. So if it's at the church, then it's church hurt. If it's hospital or malpractice, you're suggesting it as well. Go ahead.
And just like in a hospital, a person can, give me the wrong medicine, or a doctor can hurt me. But when I sue the hospital.
Sure.
So yeah, people, when you start separating the entity, I can't separate that doctor from that hospital in that moment because I was hurt at the hospital.
Okay, all right. So then there is oftentimes, which is what we do, the one individual is seen as the whole, a representation of the entirety. Even though a person may be at fault, the representation is often the blame for one or two persons that are at fault. Now, here's what's interesting, because for most of us, we have church is seen as a safe place. So we want our safe place to be non-confrontational, and we want that safe place to be a place where there's not only non-confrontation, but no affliction to our being or our well-being as well. But isn't our houses, don't we want our houses or our homes to be a safe place as well? I would hope you, yeah. We want our homes to be a safe place. So when the home, then, when there's hurt that we experience in the home, then it becomes real and present for us, because now we start reacting because of the things that have happened to us in the home because of hurt that has occurred. So then there are delays in coming home, and there's all these other factors that go into people wanting to work more, and just a number of things that go into that because of the pain that one feels in home. So then you'll sit in the car a little longer than you would, looking for reasons not to go in. All right. Now, I'm talking to some real stuff here, to real people. And so when you experience the hurt then, but it happens so you'd be more prone to accept hurt at work than you would in a safe place. But is it realistic, because you're dealing with people who are emotional at home and at church? We're emotional creatures. We're not flawless. So then, but we expect that people, they should not. Are those unrealistic expectations? Yeah. It's almost unrealistic. We want someone not to meet our standard, but how can they stay at the standard that we have in our own mind? And then, if we're hurt, doesn't it require emotional intelligence to deal with the hurt? Because the reality is, to forgive, you need emotional intelligence. To trust God, you need emotional intelligence. Yes, sir.
I think sometimes what we do, we put people on pedestals according to their titles, and it's almost like a double hurt, because we in the church and we surprised that person did that. But like the sister said, they would have did that on their job. So sometimes I think we give them too much, put them on a pedestal.
Sure.
And I believe also, when a person hurt you in church, help me with the scripture, a little leaven leavens the whole lump. So it affects the whole body, because we're not operating in our spiritual gifts. So it does affect us.
Right. Well, the reality, keep in mind, as we open up with, meekness is through the Spirit. Meekness, temperance, interchangeably, it's self-control. So when we don't operate having self-control, then we will, if we don't know how to control our emotions, then the reality is we are going to hurt not only ourselves, but we're going to hurt other other people. It's just a reality of that, because if we don't control those emotions, if you're unaware of how you feel and you can't control how you feel, that's like a blade just turning everywhere. You're going to cut somebody at some point in time. But now watch it now, because also, if you know how you feel, and then you react with intent to get back at somebody, yeah. And so sometimes, you're not being, you call yourself, you're not being mean, but you're being sarcastic. And can that sarcasm also provide injury as well? I saw Jessica saying.
And I agree that it's unrealistic expectations, just the same as, I'm going back to a hospital, if a doctor has been working a 16-hour shift and a surgery takes twice the amount of time, it's unrealistic to expect that they're not getting tired, they're not growing fatigued, that they've missed a meal, that doesn't affect them, that they may not be in pain themselves or have an ailment. Or like if a teacher makes a mistake in school, it's unfair, realistic that that person, although in a place of a profession or authority, that they can't make a mistake. They're human. So I think it is an unfair expectation to think that that can't happen.
Yeah, right. Because our humanness is being displayed. I see your hand. Marva says that it's people that don't hurt you, the church does. Tanya's saying the flesh is alive, therefore your flesh will always react, suggesting that our emotions lead to a reaction. Leo?
One thing that I would say with anything with any type of hurt in any situation like that, a lot of it is still upon you. You interpret what happens to you, and like if you go to a lot of like psychiatrists or psychologists, they'll tell you that what happens, what somebody else did can affect you, but you determine how it affects you. So I think it's a lot of insecurities that go into it as well, and not actually having decent emotional health as to actually how to deal with situations when things don't go exactly how we planned it to go.
Okay, so you're saying you interpret and can whatever is given to you, you got to decide what to do with that, and decide if this is going to hurt you or stay with you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, emotional intelligence. See John saying as well.
In one part, all of this sound pretty good, but in reality, we do add weight to different people based upon what title they have. We look at their titles and we give them a spiritual weight where we think they have some form of maturity. But then going back also, I've noticed a lot of people, I guess the right word is people that come in green. They first come in, they don't know church environment, they get saved, and they just think this is a beautiful utopia. Then when they get offended by somebody that they have gave some spiritual weight to, they don't know how to process that all the time. They really don't. They get offended, they miss in church for about 30, 60 days, and you ask them what happened to you, and you look at it and be like, man, that's something light. That ain't nothing at all. But to them, it was like the end of the world.
Sure.
Because when they come in here and they first get saved and they don't know church environment, it's like the Garden of Eden. It's like utopia. I mean, there's fresh fruit on the trees. It looks beautiful and green. They think everybody just, peaceable and kind and don't do this and do that, and that's not always the case. So a lot of people don't know how to process that.
Well, wouldn't that go back to unrealistic expectations, because we're expecting people to respond in a certain way, but they having emotional intelligence, everybody doesn't have that, and so that if they don't have good emotional intelligence, and if I don't have it as well, then I'm expecting something out of them that they can't possibly give because they're unaware of their own emotions.
But in one part, I think in what we've done, we have cultured that environment where we take these people and make them look like gods, when really they're not. Mother so-and-so, I don't care, she can be saved 50 years, she can still cut up too. But sometimes we put these people on like spiritual pedestals when really they dealing with the best they know how to. But you have some people come in and don't know how to process. I accept people who they are. regardless of that. I mean, I done seen it all. You know, I done seen it all. I accept people who they are. Some people don't know how to do that.
Yeah. And I agree with you. We do have that tier of hierarchy in church, but that's not just church alone. We do that with celebrities. We do that with basketball players, athletes, etc. We have these degrees of expectations that we believe that they should perform at. Politicians, and so when people aren't doing that, we now suggest or think in our mind, that they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Case in point, today Michael Jordan was said to have given back to his community in North Carolina, and you had all these comments going on because he was given to these victims and for the Florence hurricane, and some were praising him, and some were thinking that he should have did this instead. But now, so that people have this expectation because he is at this status, it's what he's supposed to do. Now, whether he's required to do it or not, it's up to him. But the thought is, because here's where he came from, the expectation is, well, that's what he should be doing that. Now, we'd ask ourselves, if we were at his status, having the funds that he had, would we in turn? So we make those assumptions without necessarily being in that seat, from the presidential to whatever. We make those assumptions. We got to make it very, very quick because our time is up. Okay, you got to be very quick. Real quick. Okay.
I learned, experiencing church hurt. Sometimes I had to examine myself to see why I was offended as well.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely, and that's something that we all, and I think Leah was alluding to. We got to determine interpret what happened, and decide what we're going to do with it. Because I could take someone not giving me a piece of cake and turn that into a hurt. I've seen people, because the name wasn't included on a program. They were on program, but it was not printed. They were hurt by that and decided, I'm leaving, because their name was not printed. Now, they performed in the program. They did what they were supposed to do. It's just that their name was not printed. So they felt like they were being left out. So we have to decide what we're going to do with that. Real quickly, because the time is up, actually, is depression a sin? Why or why not? Here's how we'll tackle this. Is depression an emotion? You want to nod your head and say, yes. Okay. Depression is an emotion. So if depression is an emotion, then depression cannot be sin. It's only how long you stay in a particular emotion. So you can be angry and then stay in anger too long. Oh my. And then react negatively with it. You can become depressed and then stay in it too long and then act negatively with that, and it becomes something it was never intended to be. So depression is a result of sorrow and grief, but now how long do you stay there? And what do you do with that, right? Real quick, sir. John.
A sin, or initially it's already a sin?
I would not dare give a time limit for an individual, because everybody has their time. Some people bounce back faster than others, but I do know this, is that there has to be an objective plan to resolve and come out of. So there has to be something constructive that we're doing to be healed and to grow from this, as opposed to something destructive. It's natural to be depressed because you lost a family member. It's natural. You can lose a family member and just be depressed because you lost them. But how long will you grieve over the loss of that family? No.
Well, I asked about time. I mean, you look at Jesus in the garden. I mean, isn't that a great example of him dealing with, of like depression?
Sure. So if you're now deciding to give up life and you're digging a grave, or you're digging up their grave to join them in the grave, now we've got some issues that are resulting with the design that God made you to be, and now we're reacting negatively to an emotion that God gave us. It's natural to grieve. We're supposed to grieve. It's natural to be sad. We're supposed to be sad when we're losing something. Those are natural emotions. But now, what are we doing with? Is it constructive or is it destructive? That's in anything, whether it's anger or it's stress, even happiness. Is it constructive or is it destructive? Because you can be destructive with happiness. Yeah. You can be destructive with happiness. So you got to find, you got to make sure that is within the confines of its intended purpose. Okay, it's an intended purpose. Now, here's our very last one, and this might segue into another one, to next week actually. How do I overcome thoughts of suicide, and how do I help someone else overcome thoughts of suicide? You know, and here's how we'll approach it. Which like this. So far, the noon class and 5:30 want to talk about this next week. They want to devote an entire class to suicide. And if you guys are in favor of that, then we'll do the same thing. We'll because we need to find out, is it sin? You know, we didn't know, is suicide sin? Because you're putting people in hell, but is it sin? And then there are those who say, well, rest in heaven and rest in Him. But first, we got to know, is it sin? All right? And then, what do you do if you have thoughts of suicide? And we'll do this real quickly. I need you to count 5 people. And then when you get to the 5th person, I want that person to stand. Okay? Stand. And now 5 more. 5 more. Okay. Which one? Sister Kim? Okay. You'll stand. 1 in 5 people are struggling with a mental issue and has contemplated suicide at some point in their life. 1 out of every 5. Which would suggest, if we went in this room and we start counting, that there's somebody in this room that's battling with something emotionally, that they're having issues with, and also they've had thoughts of suicide. 1 in 5. And sometimes we can keep the straight face and be sanctified and know how to play the part, but we don't even realize that person is really dying inside. Okay, you guys can sit down. 1997 was a rough year for me. It was probably the worst year I've ever had. The highlight of that year for me was the 26th of November. That was when Leah was born. But 96 was a rough year, and it started on February the 18th. That's my birthday. My mentor died on that day. He had just days before blessed me. But now, when he died, things around me start crumbling. Literally, I was used to things working out, things being all right, things being okay. I was used to these things being good. I was not used to having to deal with failure after failure after failure after failure after failure. And so now, as all this started to occur in my life, it was a domino effect. I want you to do this real quickly. Whatever paper you have, and even those who are watching online, I want you to take whatever paper you have and roll it up into a scope, okay? Roll it up into a scope and then put it over one of your eyes. Whatever paper you have, I want to ask you to roll it up into a scope and then put it over one of your eyes. Now, here's the idea and the reason behind that. Someone that is battling with thoughts of suicide or struggling with a mental issue, oftentimes is just like that. They have a tunnel vision, and all they can see is that which they're looking at. And it's what their thought is constantly upon, and they have a hard time being able to see anything else except for that. And it is overwhelming, it's overcoming, and you might want to tell them, Isaiah 26:3 says that they that keep their mind set on Him, He'll keep them in perfect peace. But if all they see is that one thing, it's hard for them to focus on anything else. So now for me, I was taught in church, if I killed myself, if I committed suicide, I was going to hell. So I didn't want to go to hell. but I certainly did pray and ask God to take my life. I pray every day asking God to kill me, to let me die, to let somebody else take my life. I prayed, asked God to let somebody come in and break in the house and to take my life. I asked him, driving places, let my car go off the road, let somebody sideswipe me. You know, I was praying for death constantly. I was going places to preach, sitting outside the church before I went in, knowing I had to preach, asking God to let me die before I went in. Go in there and I'd preach to them, saints rejoicing, praising God, speaking in tongues, running around, dancing. Go back into the office just after finish preaching, saints rejoicing. Now, and they're all happy. I'd go back in the office, get on my knees and ask God, please let me die. And this went on over and over and over again, because the pain was just too much. And it was just absolutely overwhelming. To make a long story short, I was in Roanoke, Virginia preaching. And as I'm there that night, I'm preaching. I did the same thing again. Prayed to die before I went in. The saints began to rejoice during the service, and they're all dancing. And I walked out the service, and they're still dancing. I'm going back to the office. An old mother, as I'm walking out, she reaches, she gets out of her seat. She says, "God bless you, baby. I love you." And she says, "You can't hide your pain from God." And I'm walking to the office, and I'm thinking, first of all, who is that woman? And as I'm walking back, the tears just running down my face. It just flooded my face, because she had just found me out, I'm saying. So now I go back in the office and I'm praying now and saying to God, I don't know if I really want to die, but I'm not really sure about this, because at this point I'm confused. But I'm still not saying, forgive me, God. Just being very honest with you. We went to Pizza Hut that same night, because church folk eat after church. And so they took me out to Pizza Hut that night before I went to the hotel. And so as I'm there in the Pizza Hut, I love pizza. And I didn't even know I had an ulcer until that night. I ate just one slice, and if it was a few bites, my stomach was killing me. I'd never experienced that kind of pain before. And so now I get to the room, and I didn't tell anybody that I'm in pain like this internally. Didn't tell anybody I had an ulcer. Didn't know what an ulcer. They even had an ulcer. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, maybe this is an ulcer. And I realized that's what had happened. I am in the hotel, tears running down my face, and I'm asking God, please forgive me. If I want to die, because I think I'm going to die now, please forgive me for my thoughts. Accept me in God. Because I'd been praying for it. The next day, I drive back home because I want to be home for noonday prayer at the church, because I was still going to prayer, still preaching sermons, still singing praise and worship, still doing all of that. Got to noonday prayer. My dad was waiting on a phone call for someone so he got up out of noonday prayer, which was an unusual action. And a lady called. It wasn't a phone call he was waiting for. A lady called the church from another state. It was not that same lady. Got it from another state and said, the Lord told me to tell your son this message: positive praise brings deliverance. My dad tapped me on the shoulder, slid me the paper to me, and it had the person's name, and I read it, and I'm telling you, I cried, I boo-hoo. Prayer was over. I'm still there just crying, repenting, because now I had decided I was giving up on life. And can I be honest with you? If it was not for those 2 days of intervention, I'm not really sure what the other days would have been. And I'll be honest with you as well. If I was not afraid of going to hell, I'm not even sure that if as time went on, if the fear of hell would have stopped me. It was those 2 days. Somebody decided to invade my space in a subtle way, and I didn't even know it. Saved my life. And the reality is, when I say to you, I would not be here today if it wasn't for that, I'm telling you, I'm not just talking about just being your pastor. I'm talking about I would not be alive today. I'm thankful for those moments, because now it was a month or two later that now Leo was born. I could appreciate his birth Because somebody was honest enough and courageous enough to be able to speak and say something subtle enough. We got to talk about this kind of stuff. Now, I told you my story because I'm certain of this. There's somebody in this room that's been battling. And you needed someone to be honest enough with you. There's somebody online right now, on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, that need to hear someone be honest with them and tell them, yeah, I know how you feel. I've been there. And I'm convinced of this, that is that breaking point for me that maybe also realize a lot of these traditional thoughts I had and standards I had that had nothing to do with my relationship with God. It was that made me more compassionate towards people. It made me understand that the plight that we actually go through on a day-to-day basis. I want to pray with you right now. Bow your heads. Father, I thank you for a moment like this. I so appreciate, God, a chance to be able to talk and to be able to share. I realize, God, that there are those of us who are, we've got all these emotions and we're battling with these things on a continual basis. God, I also realize that as we're battling with these emotions and all the things that we're flooded with on a constant basis, some of us, Lord, it's anger, it's frustration, it's just being overwhelmed by life and by thoughts and by family. It's all these myriad of things that are just coming at us all at one time. I ask, God, that you would help us in ways that we can comprehend, in ways that we can receive it. Knowing, God, that each of us are completely different from another. And God, some of us, God, have reacted negatively. We've hurt others, we've hurt ourselves, and we've caused this whole catastrophe, not even realizing our whole life has been altered because of that emotional moment we had at that time. Help us, God, I do pray. And Father, I pray not only that we've hurt ourselves and our family, but we've hurt friends and others as well. And we need a way back to, a way of recovery, God, back to that place. So I'm asking God to heal us, I pray. I'm praying, God, for that person right now that has those thoughts of suicide. That person, God, that's right now it feels so overwhelmed by it. I pray for that pastor, God, right now that is so overwhelmed by what's happening in his church. He or she right now, God, is ready just to give up and just ready to walk away from life altogether. I pray, God, today for that husband, that wife, that father, that mother, that brother, that sister. I pray for my friends right now. You would be that voice, that inspiration, that breath, God, breathe life into them. Let someone speak a word that will transform it. May this lesson, may this moment, God, save their life. Thank you, Father, what you're going to do. God, help us to be more sensitive to your spirit and sensitive to others. Help us to have empathy towards other people. And I thank you, God. And I thank you, God, for saving somebody right now, not just from sin, but saving their life, God, right now. I so appreciate that. We're going to serve you. We're going to bless you for the rest of our days. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Let's prepare ourselves to bring the Lord his tithe and receive our offering as well. I make no apologies for my story that I told you. I'm in a much better place now.